Hey, Carly here. Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is on a break again this week. So instead, we're releasing an episode from our Patreon archives. Hope you enjoy our recap of The Curious Case of Natalia Grace, Natalia Speaks, otherwise known as Season 2 of The Curious Case of Natalia Grace. If you want to go back and listen to our recap of the entire first season, you could do that over on Surviving Sister Wives. It's episode number 215. And we hope you get caught up because Season 3 is dropping on Monday, January 6th. Apparently, there's a lot more to the story to know. So enjoy the episode, and we'll see you next week.
Surviving Sister Wives contains adult content that may not be suitable for Latter-day Saints or sinners. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It.
I'm Corey.
And I'm Carly. And today we are talking about The Curious Case of Natalia Grace, Natalia Speaks.
So it's technically season 2 of The Curious Case of Natalia Grace, but then they've been referring to it as Natalia Speaks.
Yeah, it's like it's separate thing, but then technically not a separate thing.
I don't think that they planned to have multiple seasons and to keep this story going, but it's just so crazy. And the more that they reveal and unveil, then the more secrets just keep coming out of this thing here.
Yeah, this is only the beginning. We're going to have a season 3 for sure.
They assured us that the story will continue.
So if you need the background on this, you can go back and listen to our first episode we did recapping season 1 of The Curious Case of Natalia Grace here on the Patreon.
I guess you can call that Michael Speaks.
That's what it should have been.
Should have been.
We'll never get Christine Speaks. That's pretty clear.
That's the bummer. Yeah, I really would like to see what Christine has to say. I'm sure it would be absolutely insane.
Imagine if Michael is the level of crazy that we're getting out of him, what is Christine?
Yeah, he was the hype man. There was the codependency that was going on in their relationship for sure. So I don't know if she was more pulling the strings behind the scenes and it wasn't as public. I feel like there was ego in with Christine and what she was doing too. So I'm sure that she has to be out in front in the open with some crazy shit too.
We'll never know. She's hiding up in Canada away from everybody.
Damn. Yeah.
Far, far away from this production crew.
Can't reach her in the Great White North.
There's no episode description because this is 6 parts and I'm not going to read them all to you.
Well, yeah, it's just kind of the series as a whole, I suppose. A continuation of season 1.
So we're going to talk about a summation of all 6 episodes.
Some of the stuff felt a little bit, not recycled necessarily, but there was obviously, we had to get Natalia's take on a lot of the claims. And we know Michael made a lot of claims in the first season that he just talks and talks and talks.
I do think that the producers felt like they had a responsibility to almost directly respond to some of the allegations that were made in the first season by Michael and then like through the court documents and things that they brought up, because they really tried to make this girl look like a monster.
To which, again, I think that they were making this as a standalone doc. It was going to have a lot of the season 2 footage mixed in with what we saw as season 1 footage. But then they decided to tell one part of the story and then leave it as a bombshell reveal that then we have to hear from Natalia, her side of the story. Because if you intercut this, Michael immediately loses credibility because a lot of the things that he says, that he talks about, that he claims can easily be disproven.
Well, I know we talked about that in the first part that we recapped.
I smelled it from the editing alone and just the interviews that were taking place with the people, the experts, subject matter experts who were reviewing footage and speaking to it.
But they worked really hard to try to make us confused in the first season, going back and forth between what's going on here. Well, let's give the background for anyone who hasn't listened to that episode.
For anybody who can't sniff out a crazy in the first 5 minutes from watching that episode in season 1.
So Natalia is a Ukrainian orphan with a form of dwarfism. She was adopted back in 2010 by Michael and Christine Barnett. They were told that she was 6 years old when she was adopted. But then they quickly changed their tune and they claimed that this was not a child who was in their home. this had to be an adult who was masquerading as a 6-year-old and that she was dangerous. They ended up re-aging her while she was in a psychiatric facility, and they made her from, what was she, like 9 at the time? Because they'd been together for a few years. They had her age changed to 22 years old, so they wouldn't be legally responsible for her anymore. And then they proceeded to abandon her in a series of apartment buildings that were inaccessible for someone with her disability and were dangerous living conditions.
Which we found out very quickly in season 2 as well, when they went back to visit some of those spots. The second apartment that they went to, there was actual gunfire that was recorded multiple times during the interview right outside her front door.
So they stole the storyline from it. Was it called Orphan? Like literally that's the name of the movie?
I think it was, The Orphan.
The Orphan?
Was a movie that came out right around that time.
I mean, like it aligns perfectly. They stole the storyline and decided that they were going to convince everyone that this was a dangerous person who was living with them, who wanted to harm them and their children.
So that was season 1 in a nutshell, because we had Michael's interpretation of what that experience was like, and then his legal battle with Natalia, but we didn't really know what was true, what was made up.
So it wasn't with Natalia. Just want to clarify that.
Oh, right.
So this was a criminal case that was taken up against him, but it sounds like he may have a case against Natalia coming.
Yes. So I think that's what the point of season 2 is for Michael, is how do I avoid a direct case with Natalia specifically? Because when we jump into season 2 here and Natalia speaks right out the gate, the first thing that they do is that they confirm Natalia is, at the time of filming, she is now biologically 22. So she was inaccurately re-aged legally and was being treated in legal circumstances as an adult when she was about
10,
11, 12.
9, 10 years old.
So the way that this was proven was through their dentist, who had x-rays at the time when she literally has baby teeth that are still in her mouth, and then she has her adult teeth that have yet to come in. It's pretty hard to fake that.
Yeah, this story was disturbing because, again, this happened back when Christine first took Natalia to the dentist, going to a pediatric dentist, and she comes in there with an agenda trying to get the doctor to say this is an adult. And they're like, no, bitch, these scans show she's got a ton of fucking baby teeth up in there. There's no way that this child is any older than, what did they say, like 11? Like, she's definitely still a kid.
Right in that range, 7 to 9, probably right in there.
Christine does not accept that, and she moves on to the next professional that she can manipulate to get the answer that she wanted. But now they're going back and looking at these records, which existed at the time that they took this case in to have her re-aged, and no one ever brought these up. Despite the fact they knew that they existed, and that the doctor told them that she was not, in fact, an adult.
There was a lot of things that, I don't know, Michael's legal counsel was worth every penny, because there were a lot of things that they were told to just go ahead and not take into consideration as part of the case. We can't talk about her re-aging. That's not part of this. And that was the whole issue in season 1. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, we know that Natalia was telling the truth right out the gate here in season 2. So let's hear her side of the story, because now her mission becomes for this entire season is, why? Why did the Barnetts adopt me if they were just going to treat me so bad? Like, what was the point of this? And the shortest answer is that Christine is a psychopath. That's probably the quickest way that we could answer that.
No, she's definitely a disturbed individual, and so is Michael.
Equally so, if not more.
It does sound like Natalia is open to possibly holding them civilly liable for the things that they've done to her, because again, she was a child who was abandoned to live in dangerous situations by herself. At one point, she mentions that they dropped her off at a halfway house when she didn't know what to do, and there were people doing drugs and, saying all kinds of inappropriate things, and she was terrified.
That was after she was discharged from a mental institution, she went to stay at a halfway house because she didn't come back to the house with them because they didn't feel safe around her.
It does feel like they attempted, or at least Christine attempted, to leave her in situations where maybe she just might go missing or get murdered.
Or get addicted to something.
Or fall down the stairs and break her neck. Like, there were a lot of things that were done that would lead you to believe not only was this negligence, but there was definitely a motive behind it.
So this is kind of where we get into this spot where that's where we're finding out these reasons that Christine wanted to re-age, but then we have to go even further back. What was the reason for the adoption? Because why did Natalia even get into this scenario? And that's where we find out Christine was building an empire. She was working on a book because she had already proven that she could make children geniuses. She proved that with her son.
Yeah. So the only person who's going to participate who I guess is not concerned about being sued again, although he is, but he's willing to talk. He thinks he's very convincing. Michael. Because we're not going to get Christine. So Michael's here to tell Natalia the background. What is his thoughts on why this happened?
Well, he's offering her closure because he's such a good guy.
Right.
And
right.
also because Christine is the boogeyman in both of their lives. They share the same monster.
So they agree to have a face-to-face conversation. They're going to sit down and talk to one another. And that's why it seems like Michael wants to participate. He is trying to convince not only Natalia, but also us, the audience. He has to be a narcissist, right? If he thinks he's this convincing, because season 1, performance was not good.
I didn't buy it.
Everyone walked away being like, this man belongs hospitalized somewhere.
Well, just, yeah,
Never
not
mind
even
Natalia.
Not even narcissist, but just delusional.
Yes, extremely delusional. So he thinks that he's going to convince everyone that Christine was a monster. So he and Natalia have been abused by the same person. They share the same monster. And that Natalia is supposed to be convinced throughout this conversation that they have that he was equally a victim of Christine's.
If not more so than Natalia by most of what he says. But we'll kind of save that for a little bit. Let's get into the background here as far as like what Christine was trying to adopt this child because she had her monetary goals of landing a book deal, multiple book deals, and then starting an entire child programming system that would make kids into geniuses.
Yeah, this is like, I'm not so sure that I completely buy the story that they gave us. And I think it's probably because it came mostly from Michael.
Yeah, that's not helping.
Like why he thinks this happened.
A $600,000 book deal is a pretty good reason, though. You gotta keep the content generating here. And so if we've already made our one son a genius, we're gonna need another kid in here. And I think she saw that as an opportunity. How can I garner more care from the general public, and how can I be elevated to sainthood? I think that was another way that she was describing this, by adopting a child with special needs and then providing them with this genius treatment as well. It's a win-win from her perspective because she's going to get paid based on the book deal and the content that she's going to try and make out of that, elevating her as mom of the year and this awesome genius person, but then also any of the general sympathy and admiration that she'll gain from her neighbors and fellow people in their community.
Yeah, I think she had multiple reasons for doing it. The weird vibes that were attached to this was that Michael wanted to make it very clear that Christine took all the money from the book deal.
So if you're going to sue somebody, you should go sue her.
Because I don't have a penny to give you. I'm just a single mother with nothing to give you.
Right. A single Michael with nothing to give you.
So, yeah, the whole background on this book is really weird. They have a son. Their oldest son is autistic, and she claims to have made him a math genius.
Which, how much of that is just
something that came naturally to him
his
versus
ability
her influence?
I don't think it was it's a nature versus nurture sort of question that I'm not qualified to answer at this point.
And neither is Christine.
But yeah, I really don't think we should take Christine's word on it.
Well, I guess maybe she thought that she had to prove it out again. Like, if I can replicate this, that's where more money comes from this. You know, she was thinking, like, I'm going to start an MLM.
Who did
I'm going to
she
start
know?
selling classes to people.
Who did she know at the publishing house? Because a $600,000 book deal for someone who's never written a book in their life?
It was an advance. It wasn't even she wrote the book. She was writing the book while Natalia was living with them after she was first adopted. It's not like this was final, packaged up, sent to a publisher, somebody bought it. No.
Like a good advance for a first-time writer would be like $35,000 for the year.
I mean, maybe that speaks to how manipulative she is, that she was able to convince someone that this was not only going to be an amazing book from a non-proven writer, but that also it was going to sell and make a lot of money for the publisher.
Just from a legal claims standpoint, I would be terrified to carry this as a publisher.
There were also weird things that she did that make it pretty clear she didn't actually have a formula for creating geniuses. Like, a lot of the schooling was done at home, which no hate to homeschooling, but we find out she was doctoring grades.
Yeah, when you're given A+ to your kids in Arabic when they don't know how to speak Arabic at all and have never seen that language. Well, I mean, I guess if you want to count his math skills, technically those are Arabic numbers, but
I don't think that's what she meant.
Maybe that's how she interpreted
the truth.
Yeah, she just kind of doctored it up a little bit. She was like, hey, I mean, this counts. He's pretty fluent in math. So that counts, right? I think we'll just mark that off as a couple of credit hours here and there. We've all done it. We've been to community college. We've been there.
She tries to do the same thing with Natalia at first, and it doesn't go very well.
So the system isn't really working the way that Christine intended. She's getting frustrated with that. And then you start coupling in, there are medical needs that this child has. Natalia requires expensive surgeries, frequent and often surgeries while she is growing as a child.
Special made shoes,
Custom
things that cost
fit.
a lot of money.
It's all very expensive stuff. So now she's starting to see, well, I was going to be making a bunch of money by adopting this kid. Now it's kind of, I'm investing in it and I'm not seeing a return on that investment.
This angered me a lot because how did you not know what to expect? Did the adoption agency tell them that she's going to need a series of surgeries? Because we hear from one of the families who almost adopted Natalia, and they also have the same form of dwarfism. And they're like, this is like very standard in terms of the number of surgeries that would be needed, what would have to happen. Like, as a community, we all kind of know that this is going to be an expensive endeavor. So the fact that they appeared to be not only completely unaware, but didn't want to provide this healthcare to her, confusing and disturbing.
That was the part that still broke my heart every time they come in to this equation, because it's like, oh man, if she had only gone with them, because she was so close to getting adopted by that family and their daughter who has the same form of dwarfism, and how much better Natalia's life could have and would have been.
Yeah, with a family who understood how to take care of her and would have treated her kindly, it seems like.
Yeah. So that's the other amazing part during all of this. The main takeaway is that Michael was so complacent in all of this stuff. He was not even complacent. He was aiding and abetting in a lot of this perpetuation of what's going on as part of the plan here.
Can we go back to the surgery thing? I was just thinking about the civil suit, because when it was first mentioned, I'm trying to figure out, okay, you have to have damages to sue somebody. I guess that the argument could be that she did not receive the surgeries that she needed as a child as a direct result of the negligence that came from Michael and Christine, because we find out that basically she has issues with the way her feet have formed because she did not get the surgeries that she needed. She had one, but that was like one of like a series of a couple of surgeries that needed to be done to correct the issue.
Multiple surgeries that are expected to take place, which is just amazing because not only did they abuse Natalia emotionally, mentally, physically, but also medically. We can just throw that in as part of the mix here too.
She has a lifelong implication from having been neglected by them. That is expensive because, like we said, she has to have custom-made shoes. She said they cost like $20,000 or $30,000. They don't last very long.
So those are the
get that wallet ready, Christine.
Well, those are the costs, the damages that would continue on through life as far as, what that would entail. So Michael's trying to still deflect on all of that. It's not his fault. He was just following orders, which that worked great at the Nuremberg trials too, but
I mean, so Natalia does kind of back this up a little bit because she talks about the abuse that took place in the Barnett home and that the majority of it was from Christine directly. Does that mean that Michael did not have a responsibility to step in when he knew things were taking place? No. And he definitely did because she mentions times where Michael was in the other room, he was in the house, he was told about something that happened that day.
He took video of Christine abusing Natalia and then was forced to delete it by Christine.
Because she was afraid he was going to use it against her.
Well, she knew he would use it against her, yeah.
So, yeah, not that he was trying to help Natalia out of the situation.
Which that's how he's framing it now, that was his motive. He was just going to show the video to Christine and she was going to realize how horrible that looked and she would change her ways and her heart would grow 3 sizes that day. But turns out that was not the case.
This is all like very disturbing. Just going to put that out there before you continue listening. We hear more about the abuse that came from Christine. Natalia tells a story about a time she did something stupid. It had something to do with like doing her homework and Christine got pissed at her.
Well, Christine was putting math that was way above Natalia's level in front of her and then saying, do the math homework. And Natalia's like, I don't know what any of this stuff is.
She's probably a first grader and she was trying to give her like high school level math.
Calculus math. And it's like, I don't know what this stuff is. And then you don't teach. If you're just putting a piece of paper in front of somebody and then saying, do your work, that's not teaching. She doesn't know what's going on. She's trying to figure this out and she has no idea what these answers are.
So Christine got mad because she didn't learn fast enough with no guidance.
Well, it's Natalia's fault. Yeah, that you're not just understanding this by me placing this in front of you. This is what I did with my other kid and he just got it.
So she set up a chair in front of a window in the front of the house that faced the street. And then it sounds like she made like a dunce cap out of paper or something and made Natalia stand on the chair with this hat on looking out the window. Natalia says it was like I looked like a gnome. She put her in a weird dress. That was part of it too.
There's a whole outfit.
Like she dressed her up.
The amount of disdain that you would need to have to go through the process of making this entire outfit for this person in the way to just humiliate them is pretty interesting to get a glimpse into that level of psychology, because how would you hate this kid so much for that long? Because I can understand people doing things out of anger and there's responses to things. Things happen in the moment. This is like long drawn out ways of coming up with ways to humiliate and abuse this person extensively. This is not just a impulse reactionary thing that's taking place. This is premeditated.
Yeah, no, you're right. She intended to humiliate her in retaliation for not doing her homework.
Or not understanding
to a high enough standard.
Her homework, yeah.
Which is why I feel like some people may question, like, do you believe Natalia? 100% fucking percent.
Oh, yeah.
This is a bizarre story that only could be true. Because she retells it with so much humiliation and shame. And there's a trauma piece attached to it, right? Where she's upset that neighbors are driving by. They're driving past the house and she's standing in this window for hours. It's becoming nighttime. The lights are going on. People are coming home from work. They're walking their dogs on the sidewalk past the house. And no one notices that she's being made to stand in the window perfectly still. It's just like nobody came to her rescue at any point when she's in this horrifying situation.
So this is where I felt vindicated too, was with the knife story, because then Natalia, when they're asking her about the hiding the knives, stashing the knives, she didn't seem to remember that.
Let's give the background on that.
Yeah.
So in season 1, Michael tells us that they started finding knives stashed around the house, but then also in Natalia's bedroom underneath her bed.
To which my response was, if these people are abusing her, could she be stashing those as a 7, 8, or 9-year-old child who's endured a lot of abuse in their life?
And is terrified of this woman?
So afraid. Are you just doing that out of self-defense? To which that was some of the professional opinions that were shared on the show as well. So that felt good.
Natalia seemed to not remember that really.
Or just, she didn't have insight into it because she was saying she didn't remember. A lot of times you probably won't remember trauma. So if that was a traumatic survival response that you were doing, why would your brain have you remember that? It's not going to want you to.
Yeah, and I only bring that up because I feel like that was a moment where someone might think like, oh, she's lying. Like, that's weird. She didn't explain why she did that. It's such a scary thing to find a knife under the kid's bed. I guess I would say we don't even know that she did it. Our only story is coming from Michael and Christine, and then we have third-party accounts from the neighbors because Christine would call the neighbor and say, oh my God, I need you to come over here right now. I'm scared that we're in this house with this adult, I guess, because she doesn't want to say she's a child anymore. And there are knives stashed under her bed. What should we do? And then she's going up into Natalia's bedroom with the neighbor and looking under the bed and showing them the knife.
So did she, being Christine, stash the knives in Natalia's room and then have a neighbor come over unsuspectingly and then look through and say, yeah, I saw it with my own eyes? Okay, did Natalia put that there or did Christine put that there?
I think that's a big open question.
It is.
She did other things specifically with the neighbors because it seemed like when Natalia first moved in, she had a pretty good relationship with people in the neighborhood. She was playing with the next door neighbor's kid like on a daily basis. They were best friends. And then Christine had to make it socially acceptable for her to turn on Natalia. So she had to make sure everyone was on her side. So she was doing things like inviting them over to see this knife under the bed, telling them that Natalia was sleeping with Michael. Her response to that?
It was gross.
It was so clear that didn't happen. Yeah. She was like, ew, no, I never. And yeah, thank you, girl. Never.
No.
We have to question Christine for having created 3 children with this man.
Just imagine how sweaty he gets. Oh, God. Just haven't even started yet. And just.
He talks the entire time.
Oh my God. Yeah. Nonstop, relentlessly.
About himself.
And about how great it is, how great it's going for him.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore. It's so gross. But she's trying to like make people feel like, don't have her come over to your house. You don't know. Maybe she'll try to sleep with your husband. Maybe she's going to try to kill one of your kids. I don't know.
Well, because then that was the other thing too, is that the most ridiculous knife story that comes out of this whole thing seems like a complete fabrication because Michael had told it multiple times in season 1. And you notice whenever he's lying or embellishing, I've noticed that he tells the story the exact same way every time because that's what he's rehearsed. He's rehearsed it because he wants you to have a specific outcome. So he adds little details at the precise moments where he wants them to be, and he has to do that the exact same way every single time to garner that same response. So that is very calculated, And you see it multiple times in this season where he's retelling stuff over and over again, and it's said the exact same way every time.
Was there a knife story related to
The
that?
knife story was that Natalia was standing at the end of their bed holding a knife, talking about how she wanted to kill them and everyone in the house. To which Natalia's first reply was, I can't even stand at the foot of the bed. It hits me at eye level. You wouldn't see me holding a knife at the foot of your bed. I can't even hold a knife with my hands in the way that my fingers grip things. I don't have that tactile dexterity to do that.
I think that was probably the most damning part, because if you think about it, she was showing herself today as a 20-something-year-old adult holding a knife and the difficulty that she has. She was, in fact, between 6 and 9 years old when this story took place, and probably had even a harder time because her fingers were much smaller. She was a child. This is a big knife. And the way that Michael was showing she was holding the knife,
it changed too when she said, or he had said that she was at the end of the bed. And then when she said, I don't remember that, and that doesn't sound, I wouldn't even be able to get up on the bed. Then he would change it to say she was in the doorway. So he would slightly tweak little details of it. And it's like, oh yeah, because that didn't happen. You're just adjusting the story to fit what you need it to do.
The story that I found perhaps most disturbing was something that Michael claims he was unaware of, which was that Christine was trying to pimp Natalia out while she was still living in the house with them.
Okay, so this was where it's kind of part of Christine's realization that Natalia is not the cash cow that she thought she was getting in terms of the book deal and her genius baby empire. So she has to reevaluate, how am I going to get out of this now? So her plan becomes what's referred to as the 3-prong approach of either having Natalia arrested, having her institutionalized, or re-aging her so that way they're not legally or monetarily responsible for her anymore.
So was this like a pre-3-pronged approach? I can't even say it.
It's a very complicated system. So I think that was what they were instilling fear in everyone, saying she's a threat. Mm-hmm. She's threatening us. She's a threat to you and your children. They're like Gaston going around to the village people trying to tell, well, not the village people, because that would be like, they're not singing YMCA. That's a totally different movie. But no, it's going around to the people in town and saying, she's a threat to you. She's going to come and get your kids in the night because you don't know what she's up to.
Or your husband's.
Or your husband. Yeah. Hide your kids, hide your wife.
Because that's what this seemed like. So she's putting makeup on Natalia. Again, she's less than 10 years old. It seemed like she was almost like making her like a online dating profile that was like some kind of black market trade you to go on a date with someone. Was she trying to human traffic her?
I don't know. Yeah, I'll trade you a book deal for a dark web invite that you have for this girl.
For real, she was offering her up to people that she found online to go on a date with. That's why I feel like she was hoping that someone would kidnap her and she wouldn't be the problem anymore. And then probably she'd get a lot of attention for having had a child who disappeared. What a horrible story.
Which, that's dumb. If you're doing dating profile stuff and taking pictures of her with makeup on and stuff, that seems weird.
Oh, the whole thing is weird.
I'm sure there would be some sort of investigation if this child had just gone missing. So that's a whole weird aspect. But I don't know if that was her intention. What eventually ended up happening was, okay, she's mentally unstable. She needs to go be institutionalized. Maybe that's where they can lock her away. She spent a week there and they were like, she's fine. She's a normal kid.
Well, the Barnetts are trying to make it seem like she got kicked out of this hospital.
Right. That's their interpretation of it, which that is not at all the way that was going. What the problem was, she was re-aged legally while she was institutionalized. So they had to take her out of the children's ward and put her in with the adults and just dropped her in with people who were very unstable, people who were addicted to all sorts of stuff and
probably
acting out dangerous, probably saying things that were very inappropriate for a child to hear.
Again, Like a very, 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 very scary situation that Natalia is going to need probably lifelong therapy to try to get past.
And to explain some of the things too, because then they were saying that she was sexually propositioning people who worked at the hospital. Are those things that a 9 or 10-year-old who is desperate for attention, hearing other people say and getting a negative reaction? They're at least getting some sort of interaction from the staff, because I'm sure the staff was doing their best to take care of what they could. But then if somebody did start saying ridiculous things, it drew more attention from the staff. So was she saying and repeating and parroting things as a child who was looking for attention in that situation by saying the most ridiculous, extreme things that she saw people react around her?
Maybe. I mean, you see this person who appears to be a child saying things that are very adult. It could have been something to shock and jar people and get their attention. But I feel like this was a big hole in the documentary because she's an adult now and they're her own medical records. So I don't know if she can, but could she request her own medical records?
Those discharge
from that hospital?
Yeah, the discharge reports or something.
Because the only evidence we have that she was saying inappropriate things and propositioning people who worked there were in season 1. They had people anonymously call in and tell these stories.
Who had worked there, allegedly.
And I don't believe that.
I don't know if I buy it.
I don't know. I just feel like Christine and Michael have been able to convince so many people to either look the other way or participate in this with them that I wouldn't put it past Michael to pay some random person some money to call this number and leave a message for the producers.
So that's just a little glimpse into some of the trauma that she experienced as part of the Barnett family, if you want to call it that. But then we start delving into Natalia's deeper past trauma of stuff that she barely even or doesn't remember at all from her time in Ukraine.
Yeah, this was really sad because she has had an entire life, 20 plus years of trauma.
It's all trauma.
Like from birth, with being separated from her mother right away.
The day that she was born.
Put into an orphanage in Ukraine. We hear some stories about things she like vaguely remembers from her time there, and it was weird.
Dude, yeah, I don't know what the budget was at the orphanage, but to have somebody wander the halls and stomp around wearing a big scary mask to scare children into bed at night, that seemed like it wasn't sponsored by the state.
That seemed something that was hard to believe at first, but they talked more about how this seems to be something that isn't an unusual story in all actuality, that a lot of these places are understaffed. They have a lot of children and they have to be able to find a way to get them all to do what they're supposed to be doing when they're supposed to be doing them. So sometimes they turn to tactics that are just to terrify them into behaving.
I don't think that's the answer, is
No.
what I'm trying to get at.
No.
Because then, can you imagine the mental state that this child was in for the days after that event took place?
You had to live your life in a constant state of fear and fight or flight, not knowing what was going to happen next.
Just absolutely terrifying.
And that's not even the worst part of the stories of having been there.
No, because then we have, some mystery doctor who was possibly drugging her and removing her from the orphanage for unknown amounts of times. There was some potential SA stuff that she may not even remember or recall. She doesn't remember everything that was going on because she kept getting chloroformed at the orphanage.
And then she was passed around to a lot of different families, which led the production team to suggest that perhaps she may have been human trafficked to some extent while she was at that orphanage. So her whole life pre moving to America, not good. Then her life once she arrives here, not good. She gets adopted by a family who then decides that they no longer want to be her adoptive family anymore. She almost finds another family who seems like an amazing fit for her. And she's just taken out of their home one day with no explanation because apparently somebody called CPS on them, which they still, to this day, don't know who did it.
Christine Barnett. No, I don't know.
And then she's dropped into this situation with the Barnetts.
Which leads us to the showdown between Michael and Natalia. So it takes a while to get to this in this season because we did have in the first episode, they try to have a sit down, a one-on-one conversation, but that didn't really go so well right out the gate because Michael was already seated. He's mic'd up. He's ready to go. He's in front of the camera. Natalia's at the door because I guess they're just renting Airbnbs and then they're just going to do this in living rooms, random houses around town that's convenient for filming. Natalia and her new dad, Mr. Mans, Dr. Mans, Pastor Mans.
The family she lives with.
She lives with. Yeah, because not...
The one she's lived with them since she was 9 or 10 when they found her at that horrible apartment.
The second apartment when the Barnetts were moving to Canada. Abandoned her.
So she's been with them all of this time and they're very religious.
Incredibly religious. And so some of that has kind of worn off onto Natalia as well. So she does not abide a foul tongue. She does not deal with abrasive language very well at all.
Yeah, and her adoptive, I don't want to say adoptive father.
I don't know who to call him. Mr. Mans.
Mr. Mans. He's not doing a very good job at first of making this a smooth conversation because he's trying to control the situation and setting rules for how this is about to go down.
Well, and to come into the space, which is a neutral space, this is just a filming location, and we're going to sit down at these chairs and try to talk about it, to open the front door and stand there with Natalia, with Michael within earshot, and go into a whole prayer about the demons that Natalia is about to face right now. And
I'm sorry, that was hilarious.
I'm not saying it wasn't entertaining because it was. Of course it was. It was hilarious in that moment. But I don't think that's conducive to facilitating a constructive interview environment with Michael.
Well, so that was the first problem. You know, Michael was probably thinking to himself the whole time, they mean Christine, not me. I don't know if he even took offense to that. He was fine. They start the interview.
I don't know if he was fine. Michael's never really like fine.
Well, he's not fine.
Yeah, but he's like, he's on the edge there. I think he knew what their rule was. And so he was gonna toe the line. He was gonna come up to the line and he was gonna try and tiptoe over it and touch that line as many times as he possibly could.
Okay, so you feel like in advance they spoke to production about the fact that the Mans family and Natalia did not want him to curse.
They weren't going to show up if there weren't things that were applied and agreed upon ahead of time because he had his stipulations. Michael had his stipulations as well. He didn't want to talk about certain subjects also. So they already had their arrangements that were in place. So I think he knew what those rules were from their side. So what ends up happening is in the first few questions, Michael is just responding because that's what he does. He talks.
He doesn't think much.
He doesn't think first. He just says things and he'll say, "Oh God," and then go into his stream of consciousness or, "Oh, that's a hell of a question."
Not the most offensive words he could have chosen.
Not the worst things that you could say in response to some of these insane things that you have to talk about because they can probably take you by surprise, or when you're thinking about things that you haven't thought about and you're trying to remember and you just say, "Oh God, yeah, I haven't thought about that in a long time," or whatever. That response seems mundane, benign, but then it is immediately jumped upon where that's offensive and you're breaking the rules and you're disrespecting us and we're not going to stand for it. Natalia needs better than that.
Natalia didn't seem offended.
Natalia was not upset it was Mr. Mans off camera who began yelling, and then Michael's lawyer, who's behind the camera too, starts arguing. So that's where the argument happens and where the breakdown happens in that episode 1 conversation, is because Mr. Mans and Michael's lawyer are not in agreement in what's taking place as part of the interview process.
I felt conflicted about it, even though I don't want to be on Michael's side because I think he's a horrible human. But I do feel like if you don't live your life that way, sometimes it's subconscious that you don't realize that things that you're saying could be found offensive by someone. So I could understand his frustration where he's just trying to answer a question, and to him, he's not saying words that he would consider to be a curse word, but they consider a very broad number of words to be offensive.
Blasphemy is a curse. And Carly, are you just saying that because you do not have a filter yourself that you can toggle on and off? Is that why you're taking this stance?
Yeah, I gotta be honest. Sometimes I don't even know the words. I say the F word. I didn't even know it came out of my mouth.
I say a lot of things.
So I too suffer from that issue.
I feel like there's a little bit of you in that defense of Michael there.
Okay. Well, I also feel like it was a neutral place to meet. And I understand that it would be extremely offensive if they were meeting in the man's family home.
Right.
And he was speaking like that. And they said, hey, one of the things about being in our home is we don't speak like this. But it's hard to press that upon other people to enforce your will of how you think people should behave when not everyone lives their life or has the same beliefs that you do.
If that was the basis of the interview and that was what was agreed upon, though, I feel like that should be respected.
All right.
So the way
maybe they should have given him a list.
The way that it was brought up, right. The way that it was brought up was, I think Michael didn't realize that what he was saying were considered to be swear words by their definition. So I think that needed to be a little bit more detailed, outlined ahead of time. They should have maybe come up with a list of egregious words.
Because you could see he was perplexed when they kept stopping him. And he was like, what did I say now? I do think that was somewhat genuine. What was not genuine was when he looked around and realized that his lawyer and Mr. Mans were in the midst of an argument that was sucking up the attention in the room, and he saw an opportunity to storm out and become the focus of the scene again.
I tried.
So well. And then he storms out to the curb where his convertible is parked and he drives off to Butt Rock.
His midlife crisis mobile right outside.
What I thought was funny was like how nicely he came dressed to the first meeting. And then the second one, it was totally like a fuck this, or like, I don't know if he thought he was going to be more relatable to Natalia, because the second one he wears like a baseball cap. He's wearing a t-shirt.
The shirt, right, and jeans too. So he was dressed down, casual. Hey, fellow youths, I'm here to do my interview now. No, the shirt. We should talk about the shirt because people brought that up on the Discord. Was that it was that red shirt of the? I think it was a meme as a penguin that was going around a while ago. So it was socially awkward penguin, or it was socially awesome penguin. I can never remember. One's red, one's blue. So it's one of those. But what I noticed, which is absolutely terrifying, is that it was actually a Fight Club reference because it was the penguin. And then under that, it said spirit guide slide. Or no, it said power animal. So it was basically like in reference to, there's a part in Fight Club where there's guided meditation that he's going to as part of his stuff that he's doing. Okay, we're getting into a whole thing.
How have I seen this movie and I don't?
There's a guided meditation part. So this is part of like when he's going to all the support groups as like that's his coping mechanism for reality at this point, basically. And so he is going to this one with guided meditation, and they're leading you deeper, darker into the cave. He goes into the cave, and then you find your power animal, which his is a penguin that walks up to him and says one word, slide. And then it slides away from him. So that's just like a weird abstract moment there that you can kind of interpret a bunch of different ways about this character and this person. for Michael to lean into that, dear God, I hope he didn't buy that knowing that it was a Fight Club reference. I hope that he just thought it was a funny penguin shirt and he bought it that way. But he totally seems like he would be way into Fight Club. And that would be his hypermasculinity compensation that he would go into, thinking that Tyler Durden's a really cool dude.
Is it even his shirt, or did he take it out of his son's closet?
I have no idea, but I can only pray and hope that he does not actually enjoy Fight Club as much as I would think that he does. I hope not.
The whole thing, both interviews, they're hard to watch. Natalia was in tears after he stormed off and left because it just went so badly, so quickly.
She didn't get to ask anything. She didn't get any answers. They didn't communicate at all.
And I'm sure that this was emotionally hard to prepare herself for. And then she got absolutely nothing out of it. So they have that second meeting, and she does ask Michael a lot of questions, like things that have been on her mind for a long time. Some of them, to me, like they definitely were Natalia's questions and not producer-driven questions.
No.
Because there was a lot that I feel like they could have asked and things that they could have responded back and countered the things that he said to prove that he's a fucking liar. But that's very much not how this interview was set up.
No, they let Natalia drive that conversation and ask what she wanted to ask and talk about what they needed to talk about. Michael still had his no-go areas, which I think the re-aging was part of that, where he was not going to be talking about those types of things. He was trying to say that it's too traumatic for him, but I think it was because his lawyer wasn't in the room this time to say, don't answer that.
And also, that's shitty. That was obviously traumatic for Natalia, and she wanted to ask that. That was one of her really big questions. So she left and was like, I mean, I got some answers to things, but like, I really wanted to ask about that, and I wasn't allowed to.
What killed me too was he's doing the Robin Brown thing where he is stealing Natalia's emotions. So what she has experienced is traumatic abuse, emotional neglect, physical neglect, medical neglect, and abuse, all of the above. Every time Natalia brings something up that happened, he goes, yep, me too. Oh yeah, no, I know. She used to do that to me all the time. Christine was always like that with me too. Yep. Oh, I had it even worse than you. I've dealt with it longer than you've been around, longer than you've been alive.
Thank God she did not continue to live in that household, because that's what this whole experience would have been like. It's a competition between you and Michael for who is the bigger victim, and he is always going to make sure that he wins.
So what Michael doesn't understand, or what he does understand, is that it diminishes Natalia's experience every time he says that. So I wish that somebody would explain that to him. Not that he would care, because he's kind of a psychopath as well, but I feel like that needed to be groundwork for future conversations.
He has like no self or social awareness to realize that he's so focused on trying to make us believe that horrible things happen to him as well, that he doesn't even realize how the stuff that he's saying is coming across.
Oh my God. The whole stuff with how he still has Natalia's cross from her room on his living room wall, directly up next to his nunchucks, by the way, which is a great display spot for those too.
So when he first brought that up, because he's doing a tour of the house and they are at this wall, and he says, this is Natalia's cross that hung in her room with her middle name, Grace, on it, acting like it was some custom thing that they had made when they had adopted her. And I did not believe it. I thought this man went to the dollar store. He found a cross that said Grace on it because that makes sense. It has nothing to do with Natalia's middle name. I thought this was a fake as fuck story. So when he tells her that, to try to make her feel like, oh my gosh, this man has thought about me for years, and she starts to cry because this cross really was in her room, I about fell off the couch.
Were the nunchucks there too, or was that a later addition, do you think? Maybe after he read Fight Club, after he left.
You know, it's adding up now.
It makes so much sense.
I could not believe that that was a true story. But also, again, manipulation. Like
100% manipulation.
I always wanted to be your father. I've thought about you all of this time while you haven't been with me. I still have these mementos.
And I was afraid to stand up to Christine because she was going to take my boys away, my sons. I thought that was pretty brutal to be throwing in her face because it's like, well, you adopted her as your daughter. So could you respect what's going on here with her as a human being in this equation now as well?
You're responsible for all of these children?
All of the children that you've taken responsibility for. So that was kind of a red flag moment for me because he was thinking, oh, this will explain why I didn't act. But then on the other side of that, you're also kind of admitting to something else that is just as bad.
Well, and also you were so afraid to lose your 3 sons, but you didn't give a fuck. Once Christine went to Canada and was gone, he did not do anything to go help Natalia.
Well, his lawyer was saying that he was asking, there's Facebook messages and documentation about Michael finding out about, oh, the air conditioning is shut off or the power's shut off or these different things. And then he was reaching out to Christine because Christine was supposed to be taking care of this stuff. And he allegedly had no knowledge of this until it became under his awareness. And then he was trying to address those as they did come up. So he was trying to take care of things minimally.
Okay.
Baseline.
I feel like it's because he was worried that he's the only one who's here in the United States, who's in the state with Natalia, and that he knows it's ultimately going to fall on him.
Liability is the name of the game. And that's what the theme of season 2 is for Michael, because that's what he has to keep pointing Natalia to Christine. You need to address that with Christine. If you have any legal issues or things to file, make sure that's addressed to Christine.
So understandably, Natalia doesn't want anything to do with the Barnetts anymore. She does not want her name to be Natalia Grace Barnett. She has lived with the Manns for like a decade now?
Yeah, over a decade, probably getting close to that, yeah.
And she considers them her parents. I think it's really scary that Christine and Michael were still technically her legal parents all of this time. Like, what could they have done?
Oh gosh, if medically, if something happened or if she was in, like if they had
Christine go pull the plug on her somewhere.
Right, yeah. If something happened in that way for the responsibility of who's making those decisions.
So I wish that Natalia would have emancipated herself.
That would have been probably the better way to go.
But we have an adults adopting adults situation instead.
Yeah, we're shifting gears over into the familial struggles are not over for Natalia because, that's where we end on a high note for her story where she is legally adopted by the Manns family, by the Manson family. Is what I wanted to say. But then we get the title card at the end and then a voicemail from the Manns 6 months after production wrapped on this season about how Natalia's crazy. She's so self-centered. She's this, she's that. She's a monster.
She's completely changed. She's not the person who's been in this house all these years. We adopted her and now we're kicking her out. She's out on the street. Not really, but she's not living with us anymore.
She's a danger to us and our other children in this house. So everybody immediately went to, oh my gosh, because that's what they're painting Natalia as in some of this. Well, right. I mean, like the Michael's lawyer, that was his defense this entire season.
Oh, look, it happened again.
She's a con artist. She's constantly moving around to all these different families and people in her life because she's so hard to deal with and she has ulterior motives everywhere she goes, which it's kind of hard to do that as a newborn baby in Ukraine. So I don't think that fully tracks as far as saying, hey, she's had a history of trauma in her life and there's a lot to deal with there. There's probably a different way to say that.
Also, we're supposed to believe that she dedicated over a decade to convincing these people that she was a certain way And then the minute they adopted her, she completely flipped it.
So, needless to say, when we saw that title card and heard the man's voicemail to the producers, I was, you guessed it, skeptical.
They're trying to present this like the mystery continues. We're going to have a season 3 where we explore what happened, what went down with her family and the Mans.
Oh, my immediate...
With her and the Mans.
With the Mans is...
The Mans is.
But my immediate reaction was, did the religion aspect finally make a conflict between her and the Mans? Because we know the Mans are living their life a very specific way.
That's where I went right away as well, because they had such strict rules for Michael that it seems like living in their house would have to be very hard, especially as you become an adult. You have your own thoughts and opinions and feelings on things, and you think that they've come to accept you, but they're maybe not willing to accept those things about you because they want you to be a certain way.
Right. So is this a sort of situation where Natalia is kind of departing from religion and that's causing a conflict because they don't agree with the decisions that she's making, or if she stops going to church or goes to different services or is thinking and viewing the world in a different way? I cannot blame Natalia for leaning so hard into religion at this point in her life, from the age of, 11 to 21 that she's living with the Mans family. There is no other way you can make sense of this world and this life that you have had to endure aside through the filter of religion, because you have to believe there may not be justice for all of these wrongdoings and all these evildoers and all this terrible stuff that has happened to me in my life on this earth, but they will be punished accordingly in the afterlife, and there will be judgment for them, and that belongs to God, and that's out of my hands. That is the only way that you could probably come to terms with this, especially when you're still developing mentally and trying to formulate your own opinion of how you're navigating the world. Has she made the turn where religion she doesn't feel that acceptance anymore? She doesn't feel the love of religion anymore, and so now she's kind of turning away from it? Is that too much for the Mans to handle? Does she just want to go to college and that's far enough? I know some religious people who are that's enough to say you've turned your back on God. You want to go to college.
Well, yeah, as we know from Mama Plath. But
right.
I guess part 2 related to that is money. It costs money to go to college. You're getting money from participating in this show. Are they upset that maybe she wants to use that money to do other things in her life and not contribute it to the family or to the church?
So I guess I would have to flip that same question where you said, is this Natalia's end game to move in with these people when she was biologically 12 years old, 11 years old, abandoned in this shitty apartment that she couldn't get in and out of? Did she plan that to then live with them, the Mans family, for 10 years, only to get adopted and then flip the script on them and unleash all of her craziness that she's had? That doesn't seem logical. That doesn't seem like that's the right thing. Flipping that around, was that the Mans' goal too, of bringing her in as a biological preteen teenager for 10 years to have her want to be adopted by them so then they can take her Social Security check? I don't think so, because that's a pretty long con there as well.
Oh, I think so.
Well, I mean, they were saying that, was she signing over her Social Security checks to them while she was living there?
There are things that are coming out about this after this has all aired. I don't know how much of it is true. Natalia is very active on TikTok. If you guys want to check that out, she's just making get ready with me videos and singing songs and shit. But she keeps saying, I can't talk about the ending of the show. So I don't really know where this information came from, but I did hear that she was paying the Mans rent from the minute that she moved in with them. So she's 10 years old and she was paying them $250 a month or something to live with them. And then also that she was signing over the rest of her disability check to them. Now, again, I don't know that we know that that's true. I'm guessing that's the stuff we're going to find out in part 3 because she's going to have to give some defense as to what happened here and what that fight was about.
Well, there's some monetary issues with a GoFundMe account that we were able to find on social media and some stories that were circulating around as well.
Yeah, so now the rumor is there are 2 GoFundMes, not just one. I know I've seen the one, which was, they started that like the day that season 1 of Natalia Grace aired. So if you're wondering about motives, that's a bit suspicious in and of itself. And it was them making this GoFundMe in Natalia's name, essentially. But it was like, hey, we're the man's family. We're a big family with all of these adopted kids. We need money to get a van for Natalia to like be able to go on a vacation or some shit. And then it turned into, we want to go on a trip to Israel. And then they raised.
Not a good time for that, but okay, yeah.
I don't think they ever went on this trip. They just took this $20,000 that they made.
Took the money and ran.
Big question as to what happened to it. And I think there are questions about like, did Natalia ultimately get that money? Do the mans have that money? What the fuck is going on? And also, my personal favorite theory, is this all a manipulation? Because this had a season 1, now it's a season 2. Were they worried about the gravy train ending? Because the rumor is that they got paid like $100,000 or something to participate in this, or at least Natalia did. Was there the hope that the money would keep coming if they came up with some crazy and salacious story that would make them want to keep filming?
It could be an angle. It could be a shoot. That's what they call it in the wrestling biz. It's when it's off script and you're just going with it. You're winging it.
So there are a lot of unanswered questions. I understand that a lot of people feel like the mans have very big hearts and they saw this girl who needed help and they took her in for all of these years, which they did not have to do, and they took care of her. I am suspicious of them.
I feel like there is part of the religious aspect, but just with Natalia saying her goals were to get her high school diploma. So maybe that means college. Maybe that means moving out, gaining some independence, and kind of living life on her terms. I feel like that's going to be a contributing factor, but also there is going to be some financial components from the man's side that is influencing some of their decision making along the way too.
They have confirmed that Natalia is living, she said, I was on TikTok today and she said she's living in New York somewhere. I don't know where, but she's living with friends in an apartment or something in somewhere in the state of New York.
In the state of New York or the city?
She didn't specify. I'm assuming
usually if you say
it's not New York City.
I don't know, because usually if you say you're living in New York, that doesn't mean like Buffalo.
What do people who live in the state of New York say?
I think everybody in the state of New York lives in New York City. I'm pretty sure.
It's a pretty big state.
I know.
Outside of there. She's living somewhere. She just wants people to know I'm safe, so you don't have to worry about that.
Watch my TikToks.
Watch my TikToks.
Man, between her and Gypsy Rose on TikTok, 2024 has been giving.
Okay, can we talk about Gypsy Rose just a little bit?
I guess we could probably.
You guys, I was so torn. I wanted to watch and talk about the Gypsy Rose documentary just as much.
Close second, and we did watch it all. So if you want to talk about it on the Discord, be sure to chime in there as well.
Yeah, that's also a crazy situation because she got out of prison and everyone was like standing her on TikTok. And now over the past like 3 days, people have turned on her. And now they're like anti-Gypsy.
It's the nature of the beast.
I haven't even watched some of them because the mental gymnastics that's going on with some of the rationale as to like why they don't like her now. But we've only seen her out in society for like 2 weeks. It's just very bizarre.
Well, just the fact that she married a man who looks very much like her mom.
Oh, how is she going to unsee that?
That's concern enough.
I don't think that marriage is going to last.
I think that's a reason to delete social media right away. You don't need any other reason.
There's no way she's going to look at that man. He's making breakfast. She's going to look over and she's never going to be able to get that out of her head.
Her eye's just going to start twitching.
Corey's twitching his eye. But there's a lot going on, so you got to keep up with what's going on with Gypsy Rose and Natalia on TikTok. It's a big time for us true crime fans.
Keeping it real.
Thank you for listening. If you want to support us, the best way to do that is by subscribing to the podcast and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Be sure to keep the conversation going with us over on our Discord channel.
Stay tuned, share with friends. See you next time.